Being middle class, I feel like you're really just in between a rock and a hard place, you know?
You question, we're in the United States of America. How can the citizens be going through such a issue?
Because it's too expensive. We've got ours, but our kids and our grandkids can't afford homes.
For a long time, America has been dubbed the land of opportunity, where anyone, regardless of their background, can rise up and achieve success. Millions of people from all over the world have flocked here, yearning to turn the American dream into reality. However, is that dream still intact? Or is it gradually collapsing under the weight of the economic crisis, wavering trust, and internal weakening? History has proven that even empires that seemed invincible, like Rome or the British Empire, could not escape the law of decline. And now, many signs indicate that America is heading down a similar path. Let's explore 10 key signs that the United States may be repeating the mistakes of the great empires of the past. Don't be surprised because many things are right in front of you. Americans used to believe that if they just worked hard, one day they would be able to live comfortably. But now, how many people really feel that it is still true? Let's turn back time to the Roman Empire, the greatest civilization in the world. If you were a Roman senator, your life would be truly wonderful. Lavish parties, fine wine, and magnificent villas. But if you are a commoner, you have to live in crowded slums, relying on bread and circuses to forget your hunger and suffering. Fast forward to Victorian England, an empire that once ruled nearly a quarter of the world. While the aristocrats enjoy lavish dinners in magnificent castles, the workers toil exhaustively for meager wages, facing terrible living conditions. As discontent rises, the empire that once spanned the world also begins to waver. And now, look at America. America once prided itself on being the country with the strongest middle class in the world. In the 1950s, a typical middle-class family could live comfortably on just one income. You could buy a house, own a car, and send your children to college without needing any loans. But nowadays, everything has completely reversed.
I think it's in the middle. People haven't given up hope entirely, but I think a lot of people are doubtful.
Now the top 1% of the wealthiest people control more than 40% of America's total wealth, while the bottom 50% of the population hold only 3% of the wealth. Another paradox is that while the cost of living has skyrocketed, wages have remained almost unchanged for the past 40 years. The dream of home ownership has turned into a nightmare, as the average home price in the U.S. exceeds $400,000, while the average household income is only around $75,000 per year. Workers are working harder than ever, but they can't afford to save or retire. American workers are working harder than ever, but getting less in return. And if there is no major change, will the middle class disappear? Just like what happened to Rome before its collapse, when no one can afford to buy a house, raise children, or live comfortably in retirement. Where will America go? America is always remembered by people for its magnificent cities, symbols of power and prosperity. But now, look around. The cities that were once the pride of the nation are now falling into ruin. This makes many people wonder, is this a sign of a declining empire? No one can imagine a modern America where there are still dilapidated areas so undesirable that no one wants to step foot in them, except for the homeless. From Kensington, Skid Row, to Slab City, all seem to be painting a new face for America.
It smells of urine everywhere. Skid Row had about 10 toilets, I think, for thousands of people.
So this is, call it the Big Green Machine, and it's a bathroom.
Imagine you are driving through Detroit, once the industrial heart of America, the world's car manufacturing hub. But now, the abandoned factories, the empty neighborhoods with shattered windows, resemble a post-war ghost town. Go to San Francisco, one of the richest cities in America. But what you see on the streets are thousands of homeless people living in tents, litter scattered everywhere, and the smell of urine wafting from every corner. Everything in Los Angeles is no better. The streets that once sparkled with lights have now become hotspots for crime, with brazen thefts occurring in broad daylight. The infrastructure in many places has deteriorated to an unbelievable extent. The streets are full of potholes, and the subway system is outdated. While China is building modern cities with 300 miles per hour high-speed trains, many American cities still use tram systems from the 1970s. Even more than 43% of highways in the U.S. are in a state of disrepair. These are not fictional stories, but realities right before our eyes. The decline occurring in many major American cities evokes comparisons to ancient Rome or the British Empire. Once, Rome was also the center of the world, home to magnificent architectural works, roads stretching across Europe, and grand arenas. However, as the empire weakened, the cities began to deteriorate. The sewers were not maintained, the streets were littered with garbage, and crime was rampant. The wealthy retreated to luxurious villas in the countryside, while the rest of the city sank into poverty and riots. Will the U.S. fall into this trap? Only time will give us the most accurate answer. What will happen when the immigration system becomes uncontrollable? For many centuries, Rome welcomed outside peoples and turned them into Roman citizens. That helped the empire expand and thrive. But when the management system collapsed, a massive influx of migrants poured in uncontrollably. The Germanic tribes and foreign groups entering Rome no longer valued the core culture of the empire, leading to internal conflicts. In the end, it was those who were once welcomed by Rome who became the force that brought this empire to its knees. And is modern America repeating this very past? The southern border of the United States has become a hotspot. Every year, millions of people cross the border illegally, overwhelming the system. In 2023, the number of illegal immigrants apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border reached 2.4 million people, a record number. People in these areas always live in constant worry about their safety.
Feel safe. We don't feel safe in our houses.
All have taken up our resources.
Large cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles are facing this wave of mass immigration. The need to provide additional housing, healthcare, education, and social welfare for millions of newcomers is putting significant pressure on many cities. And when a country receives too many immigrants in a short period, they cannot assimilate quickly, leading to social division. Some immigrant groups cannot find legal jobs, leading to increased crime and homelessness rates in major cities. Now, many people are feeling anxious and wondering if the U.S. can maintain stability without controlling its borders. Are we repeating Rome's mistake, opening the doors too wide without a real plan? After all, how can America solve this immigration puzzle? America used to be a symbol of opportunity and economic freedom. Once, anyone with willpower and hard work could open a store, build a business, and change their life. But nowadays, do the American people still control the economy, or has everything fallen into the hands of a small group of giant corporations? Do you remember that before its collapse, the economic power of ancient Rome was no longer in the hands of the people or the government, but had fallen into the hands of a small group of noble families? They controlled land, taxes, and even politics, making the people increasingly dependent on them. Looking at the British Empire, a trading corporation called the East India Company also manipulated the economy, controlled global trade, colonial resources, and even had its own army. The English people had no chance of competing with these colossal forces, and the outcome for both was collapse. Now, let's look at modern America. Do you think small businesses in America still have a chance to grow? I'm sorry to say no. America used to be a paradise for family businesses, where anyone could start from a small grocery store or a mechanical workshop and gradually expand. But nowadays, many corporations have almost monopolized the entire economy. A family once had a grocery store in a small town, But then Walmart appeared, selling everything cheaper than their wholesale prices, along with many promotional programs that attracted many customers to shop. So the grocery store had to close, while Walmart continued to grow stronger, controlling all the prices of goods, causing small businesses to be unable to compete. Meanwhile, BlackRock and Vanguard control over 20 trillion USD in global assets, including real estate, banking, technology companies, media, pharmaceuticals. Real estate companies and investment funds buy up all the houses to rent them out, driving up housing prices and making it unaffordable for Americans to own homes. Not stopping there, with their wealth and influence, these corporations continuously pour money into election campaigns to ensure that the laws always favor the super rich. The fact is that up to 94% of races for the U.S. Congress are decided by who has more money to campaign with. A America once proud of its free economy. But now, are there people truly free when everything is manipulated by a small group of powerful individuals? And if only a small group controls the entire economy, how long can America last? What do you think about this? Leave a comment and let's discuss. Do you remember? There was a time when with just $1 we could buy a whole meal? Or when mortgage rates were so low that anyone could buy a house? Those days are truly over. The U.S. national debt has surpassed $34 trillion, meaning each American citizen is shouldering about $100,000 in national debt. Despite the staggering debt, the government continues to borrow and print money to fund welfare programs, military spending, and economic relief packages. Since 2020, the Federal Reserve, FED, has pumped trillions of USD into the economy to combat the pandemic, causing a surge in the money supply. And the most visible consequence you can see is the highest inflation rate in the past 40 years. Everything is skyrocketing, but wages aren't keeping up. Housing prices have skyrocketed. The average price of a home in the U.S. has surpassed $400,000, making the dream of home ownership increasingly distant for workers. What about the prices of food, fuel, and healthcare services? Everything has increased significantly, forcing many people to cut back on spending to survive. More than 60% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck, meaning they cannot save anything after paying their monthly bills. Even the dollar, which has been a tool for the U.S. to maintain its power, because it is the world's reserve currency, is changing. But this is changing. BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are looking to replace the USD in international trade. Saudi Arabia has started trading oil in yuan instead of USD, a strong blow to the financial dominance of the United States. Countries are increasing their gold reserves and seeking alternatives to the USD, shaking America's position. If the USD loses its position, the U.S. will not be able to fund military spending and social welfare as before. And then, America might repeat the history of the British Empire, losing its position as the world's dominant power. In World War I and II, the United Kingdom borrowed enormous sums to maintain its military and control its colonies. After the war, debts piled up, the pound depreciated, and London lost its status as the global financial center. When the British pound was no longer the world's reserve currency, the British Empire lost its global power. How will the U.S. avoid falling into the same trap as the UK? Can the USD maintain its strength in the long term? Or are we witnessing its decline? Can America continue to borrow indefinitely without paying the price? The United States has over 750 military bases, spread across more than 70 countries. U.S. military spending in 2023 reached $877 billion, higher than the combined total of the next 10 countries. More than 100,000 American soldiers are stationed in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. It is estimated that military spending accounts for 40% of the total U.S. government budget, more than spending on healthcare, education, and infrastructure combined. Meanwhile, many cities in this country are struggling with poverty and unemployment. Among them are American veterans, those who have dedicated their entire lives to the military, who also find themselves homeless and lacking sufficient healthcare services. Have you ever wondered, if we didn't spend so much money on the military, could the lives of the American people be better? Let's go back to the Roman Empire. In its golden age, the Roman army controlled a large part of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. But to maintain a vast empire, Rome had to heavily tax the populace, recruit mercenaries, and funnel resources into an endless military campaign. When the army was overstretched, the empire could not defend its borders. Invasions from outside occurred easily, and Rome eventually fell. Do you think the U.S. is overstretched militarily? And can the U.S. repeat the same mistakes as ancient Rome? History has shown us an unavoidable rule. When a nation loses the trust of its people, it is on the path to collapse. And this has not only happened to the Roman Empire or the British Empire, but it might be happening to America today. According to Gallup, only about 20% of Americans believe that the government is working in their best interest. Many Americans no longer believe that their vote can change anything. Some states like Texas and California have seen movements calling for independence. Something rare in modern history. People no longer see America as a unified entity, but rather as a collection of interest groups. Even up to 60% of Americans believe that their children will have a worse life than the previous generation. More than half of young people no longer believe in the American dream. They don't believe that hard work can make them rich. A country cannot endure for long if the government and the people are no longer connected. When the people feel abandoned, without hope, and lacking the motivation to protect the country, collapse is inevitable. Remember that before the fall of the British Empire, the British people believed in the dominance of the empire, but when the government could no longer control the revolts and gradually lost its colonies, they lost faith in the system. Internal politics were in turmoil. Protests and strikes erupted, signaling the decline of an empire that once dominated the world. Can America change before it's too late? Have you ever wondered why today's society is obsessed with meaningless content? While the economy is struggling and society is divided, what is occupying our minds? The answer might send a chill down your spine. We are repeating the mistakes of the Roman Empire just before its collapse. In its glorious period, Rome was the center of civilization with great philosophers, sturdy architecture, and an advanced legal system. But as the empire weakened, cultural decline spread. The people gradually lost their motivation to work. Instead, they spent their time on meaningless entertainments like gladiatorial killings, lavish parties, and even public executions just for amusement. Education is no longer valued, art has declined, and knowledge has been replaced by cheap entertainment. Rome gradually lost its spirit of discipline, pride, and creativity. And then, that great empire fell. Now, let's look at modern America. We are living in an era of a lot of meaningless content. Social media platforms are flooded with silly challenges and junk content. Conspiracy theories and fake news spread at an alarming rate, causing society to become confused and directionless. While many countries around the world are training millions of engineers, doctors, and programmers each year, the American education system is producing a generation lacking direction. For them, in addition to studying, they sometimes have to bear enormous student debts, which they might not be able to pay off even in a lifetime. In fact, Rome did not fall because it ran out of money, but because it lost its national spirit, morality, and intellect. Is America heading down that path? The U.S. used to be a country with an important voice on the international stage. But look at the present. China is rising. Russia is becoming more assertive. And even our allies are starting to find ways to escape American influence. What is about to happen? Europe is no longer as dependent on the U.S. as before, as they have become more self-reliant in economic and military matters. International organizations that were once dominated by the U.S., such as the IMF, WB, and NATO, now face competition from organizations built by China and Russia. Economically, in 2000, the U.S. accounted for 31% of the global GDP, but by 2023, this figure had dropped to below 24%. China has surpassed the U.S. in GDP based on purchasing power parity and simultaneously controls the world's critical supply chains. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, is expanding and creating a financial system to counterbalance the West. Meanwhile, with the trade confrontation with Canada and Mexico, the U.S. is facing significant impacts on importing raw materials and exporting goods to the market. History has shown that no superpower lasts forever. The U.S. may still be a strong country, but if it doesn't adapt, can it maintain its #1 position? Every empire in history once thought they were invincible, but then all of them fell into decline due to common factors: internal divisions, a weakening economy, and an overextended military. And the U.S. is facing many signs similar to previous empires. But can the U.S. avoid this rule? What can we do to change before it's too late? In fact, America has faced dark times and still rose up strongly. Although the road ahead is full of challenges, there is still an opportunity for America to rebuild its dream. If the American people and government can recognize the mistakes of the past. Along with that, addressing the root causes of the crisis. And most importantly, together, we must unite to rebuild the economy and society. Education must be prioritized. A generation of young people equipped with the right knowledge and skills can help America maintain its leading position. If America can do these things well, then there is definitely hope for a brighter future. The American dream may be wounded, but it has not disappeared. It is time to restore faith in institutions, bridge divisions, and ensure that America remains the promised land for future generations. The choice still lies in the hands of the American people. America can continue to decline, or it can rise stronger than ever. What do you think? Can America change before it's too late? Share your thoughts in the comments. Share this video so everyone can see the reality. We can change if we act in time, before everything becomes too late. Don't forget to like if you find this video useful, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next important content.